what do you think the main focus for men should be for overall health, or say the top 3 focuses for men?
High quality sleep for sure. I think a lot of people are burning the candle at both ends and are not really dialing in either their circadian rhythm is out of whack. They are, not getting to bed at an adequate time, and then also not following a regular schedule. And then even when they're doing that, their sleep, even if it's 8 hours, it's oftentimes segmented or not like high quality enough to actually reap the rewards out of it that they could otherwise be getting. And that's massively impactful on many different hormone systems. Most notable, I think that most are aware of, is how detrimental it is to testosterone levels in men. So I would say that's probably like the biggest low hanging fruit, because that's the only like restorative time of the day where your body can actually deal with, cancer cell proliferation, recovery from your workouts. Also mental health massively impacted by quality of sleep for sure. So I would say that's like the biggest thing. And then secondarily to that, as you are well aware, diet quality, hugely impactful for sure. I would say a lot of people are very focused on macronutrients like protein, carbs, fats. They count their calories. That's kind of like the extent a lot of people go to, even those who are trying to be mindful of their health. But a lot of times people overlook micronutrient density of foods, as well as mineral intake and things that go, I don't know, like there's a lot of people that will use like low calorie alternatives or sugar-free alternatives, but then they're totally void of any sort of nutritional value whatsoever, other than like, oh, it's high protein and no sugar, so therefore good. Not always the case, because a lot of these vitamins and minerals are like cofactors for different things in your body that are necessary for optimizing performance, vitality, etc. So there's that. And then I guess exercise, third. Like, what was the original question? Was 3 like main thing? Yeah. So that's probably the best I could pull out of my ass off the top of my head.
Sleep. Okay. My sleep has been garbage for about 2 weeks, and I feel like I don't feel good because of it. I don't know. I got into this, just into the going to sleep at 2:00 in the morning. Like normally my sleep schedule is on point. It's like 10:00 early in the morning. And then for a couple of weeks I'm on this carnivore diet, and I had these amazing sausages made. So I had like meat shipped somewhere, and I had these sausages made, and I guess they went through a meat grinder that had other things in it.
Oh, geez.
And it just screwed up my sleep. And it's amazing how much you need to optimize sleep. What could people do, or what if they have interrupted sleep?
Like, I guess one of the main things is people waking up to go to the washroom in the middle of the night. So that's one of the biggest interrupters for sure that could be mitigated through electrolyte balance. So having a sufficient balance of sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. A lot of people are not really focusing on mineral intake in their electrolytes, as well as just being very mindful of how much water you're drinking before you go to bed. Like, I'd say that's probably the number one, like, actual physical impediment to staying asleep, is people waking up and having to go take a piss for sure. But other than that, like, actual sleep quality, caffeine timing, definitely huge. A lot of people don't consider the half-life of caffeine is 5+ hours. And depending on how old you are, your metabolism of the caffeine gets worse and worse over time. So eventually it takes longer to work its way out of your system. And that, afternoon coffee that you had on top of your morning coffee could be screwing you up, later into the night, when you think, you just assume the caffeine's not in your system because you don't feel, upbeat and energetic anymore. But in reality, the residual effects are still preventing you from getting that really deep sleep. And there's a bunch of other things too, but I mean, those are probably the 2 main ones off the top of my head, to be honest.
So are you a fan of high salt?
What about high salt?
Well, I mean, just a lot of salt, consuming a lot of salt. You talked about electrolytes. So are you a fan of like extra electrolytes for optimization?
It depends on the individual. Like, I wouldn't just broad spectrum sweepingly say everyone should be adding salt to their diet necessarily, because a lot of people can have, go into elevation of blood pressure when they have added salt to their diet when they don't necessarily utilize it. But yeah, that could be impactful for sure for actually avoiding excessive urination. And I think caffeine also does have a mild diuretic effect. So if you are loading up on caffeine, you can imagine that that's going to make you urinate more as well. So things to be mindful of for sure.
So what's your background in? Like, do you have education wise, do you have education in nutrition or anything like that? Or
that's the interesting thing is for me, a lot of people think, like I remember Joe Rogan for a while thought I was a chemist because I had, I don't know, this like rumor started that I was like this meathead chemist. And a lot of people wonder exactly what I do, but I had an undergrad in marketing and totally useless, by the way. Like I would not necessarily recommend it for anybody.
Huh.
Yeah. But yeah, my education formally is just on the business administration side of things, but nothing really relevant to what I'm passionate about or pursue nowadays. And mainly my education is self-taught as well as through collaboration with other individuals that I respect and, find mutual benefit in, educating each other, keeping up to date on the newest literature of endocrinology, whatever it is. And through my preventative medicine platform as well, we have a lot of doctors who I kind of indirectly get to absorb like a sponge a lot of their findings through their work with patients directly, because they talk about stuff in clinical chats all the time. There's meetings all the time. I can kind of indirectly absorb information through them as they work with patients in real time. And then I'm also just like a huge nerd and I just read studies all the time. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about this platform.
Okay, it's called Merrick Health, and essentially it is targeted for broad spectrum optimization. So it's not like a typical, I'm sure you've heard of TRT clinics. TRT is becoming like a very, very popular, almost trendy fad nowadays where a lot of people are haphazardly jumping on testosterone replacement that may otherwise not even need it. But our platform tries to, I kind of differentiate it in a way that it's focused on optimizing all things from a natural angle too, and then also assessing other kind of diagnostic metrics that could evaluate, things from your lipid health, for cardiovascular disease risk, things like cancer markers. And essentially when you come into our clinic, you find you'll get teamed up with somebody, a provider who will kind of evaluate your diagnostics and then make targeted recommendations for optimization from a health perspective, vitality, optimization, perhaps hormones. And it's kind of just like
okay.
Yeah, it's like basically ties in exactly with what I'm most passionate about. And I can actually like impart that information to people who follow me.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
So my husband watches quite a bit of Mind Pump.
Okay.
And for about 6 months, he was like, my testosterone's low. It's definitely low testosterone and I need to get on testosterone. And I was like, I don't know. I'm so skeptical. I don't know very much about hormones. I know quite a bit about nutrition, and from having the autoimmune disorder, I know quite a bit about, I know some anyway. You can define quite a bit, but I know some things, but I don't really know anything about hormones. And I was like, I don't know. Injecting testosterone seems like, if you don't need it, first of all, seems like a bad idea. And I know that there are a lot of people on it, and there are a lot of people who say there are benefits to adding in testosterone. What happens if you're a person with, like a man with regular levels of testosterone, and you give yourself a little boost?
Well, it depends. If you give yourself a little boost, as in you push yourself a bit higher than what you are naturally, essentially.
Yeah.
You're essentially shutting down your entire, not your entire reproductive system, but from like an actual testicular health aspect, you're essentially shutting down the signal to them in order to minorly elevate your levels just for some hopeful improvement in cognitive sharpness, muscle building potential, etc. Like oftentimes I think people are misdiagnosed through poor lifestyle and diet habits, and they will haphazardly jump on T because they go into a LabCorp or whatever it is. They get a testosterone test done. They transiently, through one snapshot in time, at one moment, they had a 250 total testosterone level. And then they interpret that as, oh, I must be low T perpetually, and it's negatively impacting my life. I need to get on TRT. But there's all the low-hanging fruit, even that we addressed at the beginning. Those are just a couple of things. Those things are so impactful on testosterone production that if you overlook those and jump right to the drug route, you could be overlooking things that could get you back to a healthy state otherwise without the necessity to rely on these hormones. So I think a lot of people, some people do need it for sure. And there's like absolute utility in it. And it's very, very effective when it's needed and warranted. But a lot of people, I think, haphazardly get on it and may not otherwise need it. And then they end up reliant on it for their entire lives.
Okay. So what ended up happening with my husband is he was having tree allergies, so he was tired. And that was the end of the story. And now he's not having them. So it was like,
that would have been a brutal reason to get on for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you said reliant. So is there actually no way to get off of it once you're on it?
So if you were a healthy functioning male with good testosterone levels prior, if you got off within like a reasonable time frame, like, you know, there's not really a reasonable time frame for replacement because you're supposed to be replacing what you otherwise don't have. So it's like you're essentially, you know, using something, you're artificially shutting down your system that otherwise didn't need to be, and you could get back to your natural function dependent on the duration of exposure. So if you've been doing TRT for like 15 years or something and you technically didn't need it when you started it, are you going to be able to recover to natural function if you then decide, oh, I want to try and come off? It kind of depends because, again, it's almost like there is a use it or lose it kind of thought process that goes into different organs in your body. So if you shut down the signal to your testicles for a decade and a half and you have like shriveled atrophied testicles and then you try to recover to baseline, it's not as simple as just pulling out the testosterone and then everything just works correctly, perfectly. Like you're going to deal with a very, very arduous recovery phase whereby you might end up hating your quality of life so much on that recovery phase that you just end up staying on the testosterone. Now, for some people though, if they were totally healthy, like for example, your husband, if he was to get on test, didn't need it, and then was like, you know what, it's not for me, came off after like 3 months or something, he might have like a transient phase where he kind of feels shitty while it's kind of like leaving his system and then his normal pituitary is kicking back in. But in that, he'd probably recover to baseline within relatively short order once the drug had worked its way out of his system. Yeah.
Okay, so that's not like massive risk if you're testing it out.
Yeah, no, but I would definitely caution against
that's what
just
I'm taking from
testing.
This.
Yeah.
Okay.